first built the car, you know, obviously you had to go for an MOT, and the important thing was that it passed. And not only did it have to have an MOT, but if you go down certain routes, it might have had to have a single vehicle approved test, which is very rigid, and all indicators have to be E-marked for European standards and so on. With that in mind, and coming up with an MOT to get it on the road, I went and bought some Honda indicators. But the plastic started to sort of break down a little bit, and they look awful now. This is not very good. So I always had it in mind of replacing something a little bit more traditional, and how about going about this. And then I did think about trafficators. Now trafficators, they were the indicators that actually flip up from the side of an old vintage car. It had a rear light that also doubled up as a brake light. So you'd have a little red light, and then obviously you put your foot down and it would stop. And somewhere along the line, they included the indicators in there, so you had this little red light that would also flash. And I had that on an old Morris Minor. And this Morris Minor was 1958, and it was a turning point because it actually had indicators, but it also had the trafficators. It still had them. They used to have them on the side of the car at the top here, and then also they would have them midriff if it was a, I think it was a two-door. But anyway, these trafficators, they would flip out, and they were operated by a solenoid, and they were a bit sort of like finger in the air really, because you press the button and they'd flick out, or they wouldn't flick out, or they would flick out and then they would stay out and they would go back down again. So they were a bit quirky. You had to look after them. And I learnt my lesson though, because years ago I picked up a hitchhiker, and I in the Morris Minor, and I pulled over and I put the indicator out, and before he got in the car, I walked straight into it and snapped it off. That wasn't a very good lift, that one. But anyway. Now I've got these lovely little Bentley side lights with this lovely period stamp on the top, and they would be chromed, so it's brass, and then they'd be chromed on top. They wouldn't have this little base bit, and they're side lights from a period Bentley. I'm not quite sure which model, but anyway, I found these at Bewley Auto Jumble. A £5 a pair, which was pretty good going, but I have spent hours trying to work out how to get an indicator inside. So we've managed to get the bulb in there and solder it all up, and a little spring mechanism, because as you can see, I'm not really sure how the glass fitted in the original Bentley. And you can see I found these little British Leyland glass indicators, and they sit on the top there. But how do you fix that to that, and so that you can actually open it to change the bulb? And really, and it's too big to fit through the natural hole. So what I've done is I've filed a very small little half semicircle there with a round file, so that now this, get it in position, will fit in there like that. So I'm using that little half semicircle just so that I can just tease the light in there, and then I've got a nice little rubber seal, and then once I put the rubber seal in, I just do this little screw up which pushes a little rubber bit against the centre of the glass. So hopefully that's going to work out alright. Now, this interesting story about the trafficators and indicators that you find on cars, because really it was right back until 1900s that they started to realise that trying to change directions in a motor vehicle was proving problematic. So people would be putting their arms out and they were showing if they were going left or right. But it really sort of took hold 1908. They came up with the idea of having a mechanically operated mechanism with cables where an indication would come up. So they actually had like a semaphore arm that would come up, and actually they'd have a pointing hand on the end. Some of them, they'd come up and they'd show which way it was going, or if you were going left, and so on. And I think later on they actually added a light to this and so on. But it wasn't until 1915 when there was an English guy and he was called Henry Neville, and he was doing a traffic census, and he was on the Banbury Road and in the UK. And he noticed that lots of cars were having problems turning left or right and trying to show which way they were going to go. And he came up with this idea of having a semaphore arm, so an electrically operated arm that would come out, a trafficator operated by a solenoid and so on. But sadly, he did patent the idea, but it cost him £1 a year to keep the patent going, and he couldn't afford it, and he died a few years later. But it was really the Americans that embraced this, and you find many semaphore arms working in cars in the 20s and the 30s, you know, trafficators popping out to show which way to go. And then it wasn't really until 1939 that the American car company Buick, that was the first time that they actually put a flashing indicator on a car, so right up until 1939. But what I do find amazing is that it wasn't law to have a flashing indicator in the UK until 1965. So just push this little rubber seal in there quite nicely. Make sure it's in all the way around. Now just got to position the light at the front and then just do this screw up, which will push the glass against there, like so. And that's pretty solid, which is great, and waterproof.